100 senior national security and intelligence officials in Washington, D.C. are alarmed at the elevation of Tulsi Gabbard to be the director of national intelligence under the Trump administration. This is a pretty serious claim here, especially at all the major news media, and people are talking a lot about it. A lot of serious allegations going on here. But if you take a look at what is being said and who's saying it, I think you'll quickly discover that it says a lot more about the people who are making the charges than it does against Tulsi Gabbard. And I'll just tell you, just point blank, as you're going to see throughout this presentation here, that Tulsi Gabbard is absolutely the best person that we need for this job, and something that has been a long time in coming and is going to serve the country well, has already served the country well, and has a very consistent track record for trying to find beneficial outcomes for the United States of America. That viewpoint, though, is not shared by a lot of people. And in fact, they think that the intelligence community should be used to support more violence and more wars around the world that the United States is involved in. And you'll see that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump was elected over the Democratic nominee, because they wanted to continue on with the status quo, just doing everything that they had been doing literally for decades. But now Trump here's coming in because he got this vote from the American people, and now he's putting people in positions at many of these key places, like the Director of National Intelligence, that support his view. But first of all, let's take a look. What does this letter actually say? Because there's some pretty significant claims that are made in it. This letter was sent on December the 4th to Senator John Thune and also to Charles Schumer, the top two party leaders in the Senate, saying, hey, man, because, any nominee for this position has to be Senate approved. Y'all need to do some real serious checking of Tulsi Gabbard. And then when you look at some of the things that they're saying, it's pretty serious. Some of it says Miss Gabbard's past actions call into question her ability to deliver unbiased intelligence briefings to the president, Congress, and the entire national security apparatus. Then it goes on to say that Ms. Gabbard's qualifications to manage our country's intelligence agencies, and more importantly, the protection of our intelligence sources and methods. Now that makes it sound like, man, we're not sure we can even trust her with the intelligence apparatus itself. Like she may put everything at risk, may give away sources and stuff like that. That is a really serious charge, and it's also a really insulting charge to suggest that someone who has been deployed in combat zones, who is currently an active member of the U.S. Army Reserve as a lieutenant colonel, has served not just honorably but exemplary. And then you're calling into question something so elementary and basic that she might not even protect the sources of the intelligence. That is an insult, and that should be one of your first red flags, that they're resorting to character assassination to try and call into question her capabilities here. But then let's take a look at some of the specific things. What are they? One of the big things that they're actually talking about. Here's one of them, is that following her trip to Syria, for example, Ms. Gabbard aligned herself with Russia and Syrian officials. She publicly cast doubt on U.S. intelligence reports and overwhelming public reporting that Assad carried out chemical weapons attacks against Syrian civilians, giving credence to the debunked conspiracy that the attack was staged by agents of the United Kingdom. Now, listen, first of all, let's just understand what happened right there. In 2017, as you've seen on a couple of previous episodes that we have where we've covered that in some detail, you can check those out because a lot of her comments are actually there, what she said at the time and what she has said subsequent, and they're all similar. So this claim right off the top, let me put that back up there for a second. Gabbard aligned herself with Russian and Syrian officials, okay? That's lie number one. That's what you need to understand. This document is filled with outright intentional lies, not mischaracterizations, not what's opinion. No, it's lies, because they know for 100% certain that those are lies. She has not aligned herself with Bashar al-Assad. Never did, never has, never will. She has never aligned herself with anyone in Russia. But here's the thing. What these people say when they say aligned means if she says something that's also said by the other side, then that means she's aligned with them. No, that means that she is willing to look at ground truth reality and call things what they are. Now, if the other side also says something and it happens to be true, then that's just how it works out. That's true. But that does not make you aligned with them in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, she has gone out of her way to say, no, Bashar al-Assad is a brutal dictator. She's never said anything beside that. But what happened? Let's look at, first of all, the first part of it. In 2017, she went to Syria as a Democratic member of Congress to say, hey, listen, what's going on the ground here? Is there anything that the United States can do to alleviate the suffering and to end this civil war, which had been going on since 2011 in Syria? And while she was there, she had an opportunity to meet with Assad. It was not part of the plan initially, and she accepted that because, as she herself said, anytime you can talk to anyone to try and reach some kind of a negotiated settlement or an understanding that can end the suffering for other people, I'm willing to take it. And as I've said many times, that used to be normal diplomacy in America. And one of the reasons we're as strong a nation today as we are, because throughout the decades and really even the centuries, we've been willing to talk to anyone if we think that can give us an advantage and have an outcome that's beneficial to our country. That ought to be just self-evident as a baseline way you do things, but it's not anymore. Now then, it's like, no, we don't talk to anyone we don't like. We don't talk to Bashar al-Assad. We don't talk to Kim Jong-un. We don't talk to Vladimir Putin. I mean, we don't talk to anybody we don't like. And somehow that has now been transformed into an alleged strength, when in fact it is a tremendous deficiency and weakness. It costs us a great deal. And President Trump was one that himself got attacked a lot in his first administration for talking to all of these so-called dictators, but he's trying to get outcomes beneficial to our country. And in fact, in the issue with North Korea, he went a lot further towards resolving that very thorny issue than anybody had before. And he allowed some of his own advisors to undercut what he had done toward the end of 2018, especially. And I think he lost a good opportunity that he had there. And of course, the current administration just let it sour, and now things are much worse with North Korea than they were before. Hopefully, that is one of the things that can be reversed in the upcoming administration. But one of the other things that they claimed in that first section there was that she cast doubt on the overwhelming public reporting that Assad carried out chemical weapons attacks. Now, listen, I don't have access to any intelligence information myself. I've seen a lot of different information, and I'll tell you, I question a lot what these intelligence claims were. And there's a lot of good reason for questioning this stuff. I mean, you don't have to go any further than weapons of mass destruction, guaranteed they're there. How'd that turn out? All these intelligence so-called experts emphatically said, yes, this was true. And then we know for a fact that it's not true. It never was true. They had been gotten rid of. So they don't have a good track record to be throwing stones as it is. But in this particular case, there's a lot of reason to question the official narrative, because these things came at a time when Assad, after the beginning of the 2011 civil war, that he had finally started making gains on the battlefield and had put all the rebel forces and all the violent extremist groups on their back foot and were driving them back. He didn't have any need to go to chemical weapons then. If he was going to use chemical weapons to achieve some outcome, I mean, it would have come before. But the fact that it came at this time and at a relatively unimportant target that had no tactical impact, certainly not any operational impact on the course of the war, makes one wonder, now, why would he do this? Why would Assad do this when he knows that it's going to be attacked in the West and that it would be used as justification, which it was on at least two separate occasions, to be used by the U.S. as justification for attacking targets in Syria? There's no reason for him to do so. There's no value in it. Now, that's not to say he didn't, because I don't have information. I don't have that knowledge, but it is something to question, because it's like that would be counterproductive to your own self. And why would it not be this general use, or something like Saddam Hussein did when he, went crazy and killed all those like 5,000 people when he used chemical weapons in the past, something that effect. Nothing like that. This was a relatively small scale, but it was used as justification. So yes, I am questioning the intelligence there, and because of their track record, they deserve to be questioned. So see, you're already starting to see what these intelligence officials are wanting is that don't question anything. Whatever the intelligence community says, take it at face value and go forward. And Tulsi Gabbard is saying, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to examine it. If it's true, then we'll go down that path. If it's not true, then we're going to change the path and do something that makes sense based on what's ground truth and reality. That's why it is so crucial we get someone like Tulsi Gabbard who is willing to question what they're being told in, and to look across all 17 intelligence agencies and see, do we have continuity? Are there any differences of opinion? What does the intelligence across these groups say? because I can tell you from personal experience, very oftentimes, in fact, usually the case is that a lot of the people at the ground level in the intelligence agencies produce exceptional intelligence. They give you accurate information. It's when it starts filtering up the line, however, as I observed in Afghanistan, that it gets changed and parts get omitted. And then some of the senior leaders get information that is very, very slanted to try and reach a certain outcome, to try and influence them to take certain actions that are maybe contradictory to what the reality is. Someone like Gabbard knows what to look for, which is why she's perfect for this task here. Next thing, let's take a look here, is that they say, another example they give is, in response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine launched in early 2022, Ms. Gabbard similarly released a video insinuating that the U.S.-funded labs in Ukraine were developing biological weapons and that Ukraine's engagement with NATO posed a threat to the Russian sovereignty, both arguments initially used by the Russian to justify its illegal invasion in Ukraine. Her sympathy for dictators like Vladimir Putin and Assad raises questions about her judgment and fitness. So that's the second time you've heard that claim there, that she has sympathy for dictators. That is a personal attack. That is not an intelligence assessment. That is not anything evidence-based. It is adjectives that are used to describe someone in a negative sense because we want you to think badly of them. So that's another big red flag and lie number two, because that's not actually what she said. When you look at the video that they're referring to, and I watch it in its entirety, what she is saying, that there are these labs there, they are American-funded lab there, they are working with pathogens, and because it's an active war zone, we need to get them out of there. We need to take care of all that stuff, get it destroyed, so there's no more risk to anybody on the ground, in the Ukrainian people or anywhere else. Because as she said in the video, as we've seen from COVID-19, once that thing gets out there, it knows no borders. That's rational. That's responsible. And if anybody thinks, oh, that's just something made up by the Russians, yeah, no. Here's the Defense Threat and Reduction Agency, a U.S. federal government agency, that confirms there are 46 U.S. labs in Ukraine, or at least there were. And they are dealing with pathogens and several things else. It doesn't even matter what they're there for, what they're doing, nor did she say anything about what was going on in that video. She was just saying, there's a risk here and we need to get it out. What's unreasonable about that? But you see, they don't want you to think anything reasonable. They just want to say, oh, that's what the Russians said. The Russians had a bunch of other things that they claimed about them. I don't know if any of that's true. And I'm not even going to talk about what they said because it doesn't matter. What matters is that they are there. It was America funded. They were dealing with pathogens, and in a war zone, it was at risk. And for the safety of American people and people throughout the world, we needed to get a handle on those things to make sure they were safe. But you see, that is how they're lying, number one, and then twisting something else to make you think, wow, that sounds terrible that she would cozy up to a dictator. So you see that you're starting to see consistent here about this. Now, let's look also at what some of these so-called intelligence leaders have been saying. They want you to believe this because 100 of them said, oh my gosh, all these terrible things about Tulsi Gabbard, listen to us because we know what we're talking about. We're telling the truth. Yeah, about that. So don't forget, there were right before the 2020 election, there were 51 former intelligence officials, some major ones here, that said this Hunter story Biden of this, former laptop information, all this stuff that allegedly Hunter Biden did was all a Russian disinformation campaign. Remember, folks, this is America's intelligence agencies and former officials saying that, yes, this Hunter Biden story is fake. It's not true. So when you go vote next month, don't think about that. It's all about Russian disinformation. It's their fault. It's et cetera. The only problem is it wasn't true. And they knew it wasn't true. And in fact, just earlier, I'm sorry, wrong one. Earlier this year, the Congressional Intelligence Committee came out and concluded firmly that it was not true, that CIA contractors colluded with the Biden campaign to discredit the Hunter Biden laptop story. And certainly, as we know now, that Hunter Biden was later convicted because the things were true. But you see, that's your 51 intelligence people claiming, hey, listen to us, believe us. No, it wasn't true. So now then you have the situation with the weapons of mass destruction, which wasn't true. You have this situation here with the laptop that wasn't true. And then you got to start saying, who are some of these people? And in fact, let's look at this letter here that was this, these 100 people that were saying stuff about Tulsi Gabbard. It is led off by former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman, who in her bio says that in 2002, along with former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, Sherman built a global consulting business, the Albright Group, et cetera, where she served as vice chair for over a decade. So listen, that you see that on this group here, I mean, she is of the group that with Madeleine Albright, who coined the whole "we are the indispensable nation" routine, which was repeated all throughout, even up to the Biden administration by all Democratic administrations. And in fact, when you look at all that, let me even bring that up on the screen again. Oh, wrong one. Sorry about that. When you bring up on the screen that letter, let me show you that. You see that, who actually signed this. And you look, see, there's Wendy Sherman right off the top. And then you just look at all these different people. Anthony Lake, another Democratic former executive director, has national security advisor, et cetera. Lots of generals. And then a whole bunch of ambassadors. But listen, when you take a look at that and actually examine who these people are, they're basically the foreign policy elite that has caused so much trouble in Washington and has led us into so many wars. I mean, these are the kind of people, many of them specifically, that have said, yes, let's keep going in Afghanistan. What a great idea that was. And we're winning. Don't worry about it. Just trust me. We're winning. We're doing a great job. It was all a lie. All of it was always a lie. And yet these people supported that kind of thing. This whole mess in Russia, Ukraine, they continue to say it. Wendy Sherman was one of the architects in the early days. It says, yeah, we're going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, and they're going to win, and we're going to give them this stuff. And as I've shown you graphically, ever since we've had Daniel Davis Deep Dive, that is a lie. It's not true. It was never true. And yet these people are trying to compel you to believe, yes, it is true. Listen to us. Don't look at what's on the ground. Don't look at reality. We want an outcome. And so we're going to just blind ourselves to what's actually happening on the ground because of a political outcome that we desire. And if the intelligence doesn't support it, we'll suppress it. That's what's going on here. That's why we need somebody like Tulsi Gabbard to come in and hold these people accountable. See, that's what they want. That's what they don't want more than anything. They are terrified of somebody coming in and holding their feet to the fire when they make mistakes. They don't want anyone looking under the sheets, behind the curtains. They just said, hey, whatever we say, that's all you need to know. Give it to the president. Don't ask questions. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody who's going to continue in the same mold as all kinds of other people at various levels who've been involved with the intelligence community that just says, trust me. Just tell the president what we want you to tell him so that he has the outcomes we do. Those days need to be over. And I certainly hope that the U.S. Senate eventually comes to the conclusion that she is exactly what is needed. And I hope they don't just reflexively go against her because the blob doesn't want her to. This is what Trump was elected for, why the American people sent him there. And this is exactly the kind of a pick they expect to have. And one other thing I just want to point out here, if this sounds a little familiar, if you're thinking 100 security experts who said something about, oh yeah, right before the election, you had 100 Republican national security leaders endorse Vice President Kamala Harris. How did that work out? There's so many people were talking about, yeah, all these experts that are going in and talking about support for Harris over Trump. Well, you see the continuation of this. They didn't succeed then. They didn't win it in the election. And so now they're trying to subvert him this way with his picks because they just don't want the whole foreign policy blob, all these elite in Washington that have gotten us into so much trouble and have helped Ukraine get into a situation where it has had its entire future generations wiped out. And it has almost no chance to even have a decent future after the war is over by whatever means. These are the same people that are against Tulsi Gabbard. So you should be even more for her today than you were before because they are terrified of somebody coming in like this. So we're going to say on top of this here, but you just need to understand who's making these charges, who's making these allegations, and that they are lying and that they have a track record of lying. That is why we need someone, an adult in the room, to finally bring these people into line so that they do things that are accurate and good for the American people. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.